Merry Christmas, friends. Today I am recording this on Christmas Day, and it is finally time to replace my old Santa's Little Helper video, because as of recording this, it hasn't come out, but it'll be coming out in today's shop reset, so I figured, alright, let's redo my old video. Now, there's nothing wrong with my original video. I'm still going to leave it up. It's going to be linked below. I might even unlist it. I'm not 100% certain on that yet, but my point is, back in that video, I was recommending durability, and that just goes to show that it has been a long time, and things have changed. The lineup for rocket launchers has changed slightly, and I feel like that changes the conversation on the Santa's Little Helper a little bit, but you're not going to be really changing any perks today, so this is going to be more of an in-depth look on the weapon, rather than specifically focus on the perks, but I mean, that's kind of what these videos are anyway. So I actually have prepared a list of all the rocket launchers here on Fortnite DB based on their base damage. So obviously the Storm King's Wrath is in the #1 spot. The pot shot is doing a ridiculous amount of damage, and you can see the Santa's Little Helper is not trailing very far behind. Now, if you are using the Metal Marauder, you got to know that you don't want the 6 perk that damages you, because that kind of, makes it a little bit more complicated. And the Sod Buster is one of those elements, one of those elemental weapons, the Art Deco set, that can't actually have physical or energy. So all of your Sod Busters are going to be locked to a specific element. In times like these, where it's a water zone and, every single 4-player is a water mission, it can be nice to just use a nature Sod Buster and not have to worry about it. But the Santa's Little Helper, based on the way that I look at things, is the best all-around rocket launcher, because I said all of that because the Metal Marauder has a tricky 6 perk, and you kind of have to use a core reperk to not have to hurt yourself. The Sod Buster is locked to elementals, and the Pot Shot and Storm King's Wrath are really hard-hitting single-shot weapons, and the Pot Shot blows up into proximity, meaning when it gets close to an enemy, it explodes, meaning you're never really going to get to the heart of a crowd of enemies, and it's not going to be as effective for crowd clearing. It's most utilized against like mini bosses in the Storm King fight, and the Wrath is, well, not only 20 energy cells per shot, which is expensive, but it is really more of a laser cannon than anything else. So if you work your way down the list, the Santa's Little Helper is the only general rocket launcher that actually kind of suits all of the purposes of a normal rocket launcher. The other one would be like the Bazooka, for example, or the Dam Buster, even though that one's more focused on impact, and the Jack-o'-launcher, but that one's locked to fire. You see what I'm saying here? So the Santa's Little Helper has a nice little spot in my heart, because I used to roll with 3 bazookas of all the different elements, and I loved that, because back before the Baron existed, I would use my normal AR or SMG or whatever I was using, a rocket launcher, and then like a sniper or something for mist monsters. And, well, with the addition of the Baron and coconuts, the rest of my slots got filled, and I don't really use rocket launchers as much. So whenever you see me play this game, just know I love to have a rocket launcher, but we just don't have enough spots, and I prefer coconuts and a Baron, for example. But before all of that, when I used to use 3 bazookas, the Santa's Little Helper came around, and it was so strong on its own that the elemental bonus from a single bazooka was outshined by the Santa's Little Helper, and I made a permanent switch. So, obviously, you guys have been seeing some gameplay of it. This is a fantastic weapon. Even if it's not technically the hardest hitting rocket launcher in the entire game, it doesn't really matter, because it's good for what it does. It's not going to be as good crowd clearing as the Deatomizer, for example, but it is going to be probably one of your better options for a kind of cheap general use weapon. And I say kind of cheap because the Metal Marauder is a better option, but you're going to need to use a core reperk. So without using a core reperk, let's talk about the best perks for the Santa's Little Helper. Now, this is one of the very first changes that came to this weapon, is the 6 perk. You now have an option for stunning or knocking you back an enemy dealing 12 base damage. That's not a huge amount of damage. I'm not going to say it's worth a core reperk, but it is strictly better than Affliction, because Affliction is like slow damage. 6 seconds is typically less time than an enemy is going to survive when you're shooting at it with a Santa's Little Helper, and that extra base damage, whenever you stun or knock them back, which will be every single hit, by the way, is probably going to help you more in the long run. That said, as long as it's costing a core reperk, I can't really suggest that anybody get rid of the Affliction. Even slowed and snared is going to be fine. It'll slow every enemy down, and you're not going to have to worry about it. The second change is durability. Well, I guess technically the first change was like the damage, but you kind of saw how it stacked up against the other launchers anyway. So the second or third, change, depending on how you look at it, is the durability, which is now 150, because nowadays it's based on rocket ammo usage rather than breaking the launcher in, 20 shots or so. Now it lasts for like 70 or 80 or something. I did the math one time just eyeballing it, but it was never that serious. These things last a really long time now, and it's kind of nice to see. So now that we don't need that durability perk, my old recommendation of double damage now is triple damage, and I always recommend a reload perk because you're definitely going to want it. As for the elements, I have always kept my launchers physical because mist monsters are really going to be your main problem. If you're using a rocket launcher as a primary weapon, then I guess go energy. And if you're in a water zone like I mentioned earlier, I'll show that here in case anybody didn't realize what I meant. All of the 4-player missions are, water. Every single thing is ice. And that's because I'm recording this in December. In the future, this might be a different element. Maybe they'll all be nature. Maybe they'll all be fire. You're going to want to change your element, to fit that. But if you're using it in today's season or, this year's season, then nature would probably be your best all-around pick. But I like to use physical because it gives you that extra punch against zappy faces, takers, flingers, those kind of zombies. And that's just sort of how I've always left it. And if you're in just a general use case situation, energy would be the way to go. Now, a lot of people ask me about crit rating, crit damage. You can go crit rating, double crit damage on this. I don't like rolling the dice on a rocket launcher. That would technically be the most damage that you're going to get out of this weapon, but you will have to roll that dice. It'll only happen 38% of the time, and when you shoot into a crowd of zombies, every single zombie has its own chance to crit, but it's still not the way that I personally like to play, and you could definitely do reload, crit rating, double crit damage, but I just have to warn you in advance that might not work out the way that you want it to. Now, if you use totally rocking out, you will up your crit rating by a ton, and that could be a really fun way to play, but I'm going to leave you to try that out on your own. And I suppose as an afterthought to that, it occurs to me that if you really don't care about anything and you don't even want a reload perk, you can even do triple crit damage, which again, not recommended, but it can happen. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this damage to afflicted targets exists, and that could confuse some people, so I think I'm going to cover the fact that it's not better than damage, because on your first shot, if you have the causes affliction damage, you're going to do the normal amount of damage. On your second shot, you'll do 45% more damage. And on your third shot, you'll do 45% more damage. Now, it's also worth noting most enemies aren't still alive at this point, because it's a Santa's little helper, but I want to add that on that third shot, you are going to total 90% extra damage, which is essentially 30% per shot, and basically what you would have gotten from a damage perk anyway. So if you're specifically only using this against smashers and mini bosses and mist monsters, where you're going to be spamming the rocket launcher, which is a very expensive way to be doing things, on a single target, not an encampment, on a single target, then yes, damage to afflicted targets will be better in the long run. And if you're only using it against mist monsters, then damage to mist monsters and bosses is probably better in that specific use case. That said, if you're laying into a mini boss, then I'm going to have to go back to the other rocket list and bring up the pot shot or the Storm King's Wrath. Or honestly, if you're laying into a mini boss, your primary weapon like an AR and SMG is going to be better anyway, because launchers are expensive and maybe not the best thing for the long run because it's going to cost a lot to do that kind of thing. And a fast firing, Silent Spectre or Thrasher, whatever, is going to be more effective on a single target if you're going to be shooting at it for longer than about 10 seconds. But with all of that said, that just about wraps up everything for the Santa's Little Helper. It's a real fan favorite for a very good reason. There are lots of launchers in the game, and I'm very honestly happy to say that many launchers in this game have their own personalities. They are very, very different, but it was always cool to me to see the Santa's Little Helper as essentially a direct upgrade from the bazooka base game weapon. Like, there's a little bit of a difference in the reload time and how much durability they have and all that crap, but it's not really that big of a deal, and the Santa's Little Helper does so much more damage that I'll wait an extra half second to reload. It's not going to be that big of a deal. If you guys want to support the channel, feel free to use code Mista at checkout. You guys can become a channel member here, with the join button on the channel, link in the description below. Follow my Twitch. My streams are awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Merry Christmas, you guys. And then